We'll start it off with Eagles, Commies, home team, Washington, D.C., plus 3.5. The total is 45.5. Jaden Daniels and company, a nice story to this point in the season. Now, all of a sudden, though, scratching for their playoff lives, trying to hold off the Seahawks, the Cardinals, and otherwise. I say the Eagles get this one based on pedigree. I think that's what it comes down to here. Eagles obviously fighting for something themselves. The Commies trying to get into the playoffs. Eagles trying to be the number one seed so they don't have to play a playoff game in the first round of the playoffs. 29-21, Philly gets it. Um, the remaining slate for what it is worth. The Commies go after this one. Atlanta and at Dallas. That game against the Falcons all of a sudden is real big, and we'll get into that with the Michael Penix element of it. Showdown between two rookie QBs in a high leverage spot. Jaden Daniels and Nix and Drake May and Caleb Williams and all this. Now the late injection of Michael Penix into the scene is going to make it interesting. In the meantime, Hench, how say you here?
Well, like a lot of idiots who still bet teasers, last weekend I looked at the slates and Bengals Titans was 6 and Commies Jake Hayner for the Saints was 7.5. And it's like, all right, well, obviously this is free money. The Bengals are going to smoke the Titans and the Commies are going to smoke the lowly Saints with Jake Hayner at QB. It gets worse. Tommy's up 17 zip against Spencer Rattler. It's 17 zip. Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury teamed up it was such a moron festival. There was no way that game could be close. And the play calling, the commies need a first down to end the game, and Kingsbury's dialing up go routes. They're throwing bombs, and they can't get a first time. The game was over, but for a holding penalty. The game was over, but for a McLaurin drop. But then I remembered, oh no, this is not Super Bowl champion Dan Quinn. This is the guy who teamed up with Kyle Shanahan to blow a 28-3 lead, which I found delightful at the time. I did not find taking a 17-point lead against Spencer Rattler and figuring out a way to win by 1 point particularly delightful as my money went out the window. But I saw all the limitations of this commies team, of this commies defense. And, the Eagles, you called it last week, A.J. Brown chirped. He got the ball. They seem to be, Devontae Smith had a real nice game. They seem very balanced all of a sudden. The defense is playing well. That 1 seed is within sight. This is the Eagles victory and cover on the road, 27-20.
Yeah, and just to add to that, and specifically about the pedigree and the brawn and everything else that the Eagles really put on the lowly Pittsburgh Steelers last Sunday, I expect more of the same. Number one rush attack with Philly against a bottom 10 Washington rush defense. You figure Saquon is a great bet to go over 100 yards, get in the end zone, all the rest of it in terms of props. Spaghetti, how say you?
Yeah, I'm taking the Eagles here. I don't really love the line. It's not big enough, in my opinion. The only chance the Commanders really would have is to score a bunch of points. But as we've seen with the Eagles the past couple of weeks, they've been limiting offenses. I was shocked what they did to the Steelers' offense that's been on fire the last few weeks. Jonathan Allen's coming back. That's great. But as I said in weeks past, the what Jaden Daniels is doing is pretty remarkable because I just don't think the roster's that good. They try to gut the defense a few years back, and they just don't have the high end talent that the Eagles have really across the board. I just think that this game, we thought that maybe the feud between Hurts and AJ Brown was really going to cost something big, and it didn't whatsoever. If there's tiers in the NFL, obviously the Commanders are a tier below where the Eagles are. But again, you should be happy with this season because Jaden Daniels is covering up a lot of mistakes, a la like a Patrick Mahomes in years past. So Eagles win this game. Good trajectory for the Commanders, but not going to get it done in the playoffs.
By the way, I would say, just in defense of my Pittsburgh Steelers and the performance we saw against Philadelphia, they were flawed. They, obviously Philly ground them out for the last 10 minutes or more of the game. They couldn't get the ball back, but, the offense didn't look good because, the standard is a little bit different. It's sort of like comparing the Dodgers to the Pirates. Well, the Dodgers are deeper. The Pirates can't afford to lose one of their stars. The Steelers can't afford to not have George Pickens in their offense. Obviously, it's going to hamstring them. That was a pun not intended because he has a bad hamstring. Moving on. Rams, Jets, tale of two football cities. Rams trying to get into the postseason there now, tracking towards winning the division. Jets, the season is over. Woody Johnson now a punchline alongside his high-end quarterback. Both punchlines by their own hand. They've done it to themselves. The Jets are plus 3.5. The total is 46. I say the Rams go in there and smoke them 31-22. And as a part of making your pick, Hench, I'm curious where you think Aaron Rodgers goes next. Does he go back to the Jets in 2025? Do you think he goes to, there are a number of places I've seen floated for him. I don't know if any of those make a ton of sense. Do you think he goes back to Egypt or into a cave and says goodbye to pro football? How say you?
Well, my hope, of course, is that he continues this upward trend. Nice game versus the Jags, that he finishes strong and has Woody Johnson and everyone believing, including himself, that he is the answer at quarterback for the Jets next year, because I hope this shit show gets renewed. I want a second or a third
Sure you do, right?
Of the Aaron Rodgers show in New York. It's delightful. I mean, the only thing that got sad about it is they were so bad and so irrelevant so fast that you weren't our beloved Sports Center wasn't even showing the sad Aaron Rodgers press conferences anymore, which is my favorite part of Sunday night after every Jets loss. So I hope he finishes strong and comes back and leaves them right where they are, which is not rebuilding, I mean, the situation couldn't be worse, right? Coach, GM, QB, owner, and that's where I like the Jets in hell. So I think Rodgers has got a tough foe this week. Well, you give your pick, Rams, Jets, and then we'll see if we're in the same garage.
Well, I think it's the Rams 31-22. Puka Nacua. Again, it's a funny thing that happens in a season. If the season starts and we start to make decisions about teams or players or anything else, and then a player gets hurt, a significant player, and the team dips, or that player, we forget about him, then we don't really fully acknowledge the bounce back. And the Rams with Nacua and the draft picks of Les Snead starting to pay off on the defensive side of things. Man, I know I keep saying it, but the Rams are the team that could be the interloper in the NFC. We think it's the Lions and Eagles and maybe the Packers and maybe the Vikings, but the other team there. In fact, the thing that I've recognized in the last few days is, for all the talk that I have helped perpetuate, which is that the AFC is better in the QB league because it has more good quarterbacks, is there are, in the NFC side of things, I think there are more teams in the NFC by a lot. I think there are 5 teams, I just named them for you, that can actually win 3 games to get to the Super Bowl. I think there are only 2 that can do that on the AFC side, and those are the Bills and the Chiefs. I don't think anybody else can pull that off. So at least in that regard, the NFC is deeper. But anyway, yeah, I think the Rams do this. I think they hold on and win the NFC West.
Yeah, that it's so funny, all the hand wringing. What's going to happen when Aaron Donald retires? It's like, I tell you what's going to happen. They're going to reload and get more pressure on the quarterback. It's insane how good that defense, and as Brock Purdy learned last week in a 12-6 loss, and then when the Rams needed it, they needed a first down in the crappy conditions to close it out. Stafford proving once again he's a winner, and he's going to win again this week against a guy who maybe won't be remembered as a winner, having only won the one Super Bowl in Green Bay.
It really is fascinating, huh? Who would have thought that 4 years ago, that Stafford might outstrip Rodgers by the end of their respective careers? Spaghetti, how say you?
Yeah, it's never good. I mean, they win the game Rodgers looked great, vintage Rodgers to Devontae Adams, like no qualms with this play. But the defense, like I understand they got the late turnover to seal the game, but the Jaguars, sans Trevor Lawrence scoring that many points versus you, and now you have to play a team with Stafford, with those receivers, with Kyron Williams, who is like, I mean, the dude runs so aggressively hard. He's a fantastic blocker, can catch the ball. He's just a nightmare to defend. And I just think like you get like a week away from like Rodgers kind of noise, and now Woody Johnson's like vetoing trades because of Madden ratings, and he's letting his kids in the locker room like say negative things about players and inviting friends in there. Both New York football teams need to get rid of their ownership, and I don't know how to do that, but I'll start the campaign because it's pretty terrible. So yeah, Rams easy win, easy cover here. Jets, they'll put up some points, but not nearly enough to win this game.
I've been saying it for a couple of years. I heard Jim Nantz say that the winner of Bills Lions last week would become America's team. Too late, Nantz. I already anointed the Bills the AFC's version of America's team and the Lions the NFC's version of it. So America is sad, in other words, because the Lions, man, I don't want to throw dirt on them. The offense is mighty. If they can just outshoot everybody between now and February, the Super Bowl, I guess, is a possibility. But man, like I just said, I think there's some legit teams that are going to get in their way, and they're going to have to win. You assume, I think the Lions are going to be able to hold on. That's the little sunshine I can provide here. If you go through the last three games of the Eagles and the Lions should be able to survive this because they have the head-to-head tiebreaker against Philly. So I think they do get the one seed. That's the best thing they have going for them right now. Also, another nice thing, they have Caleb Williams, the worst rookie quarterback out of the lot, and company coming to town, or they're going to Chicago, I should say. The Bears plus 6.5, total is 48. I think the Lions win this one 28-24, but as you hear there, the Bears give them another test just like they did on Thanksgiving Day. Hench, how say you?
Same garage, and tempted to go Bears money line because of the decimation on the Lions defense. I mean, it's so hard, as somebody who has the Lions plus 1,400 to win the Super Bowl. It's been really hard to watch. The Lions defenders, they don't hobble off. They get driven off. Like it's not like you don't go like, is that guy going to be back in the second half? Like it's so devastating. And I think it's 13 guys now on IR from that defense. So your varsity is out, and now your JV. Now, I mean, like, I don't know, where are you finding warm bodies, but I do think I have this, the Lions hanging on again as they run on fumes in the home stretch, 24-23. It's not going to be a shootout like it is on the fast track usually for them. But I'm hoping that they, I don't know, like there's no history of being able to just outscore teams in the playoffs. You have to be able to get a stop.
That's right. That through the Super Bowl era, there are very few examples of teams just straight up out shooting whoever comes up against them. And I have the Jenga theory about the one piece. I think the whole Jenga game for the Lions has been thrown out the window. It's like you just picked up the whole thing, and now, like you say, you have to have like the pieces from Sorry or something like that fill in for the Monopoly pieces. Try to fill in for the Jenga. I'm legit bummed out for Dan Campbell. And here's the other thing. I know I keep saying it, that the real star, the drawn butter of the NFL are the progressive offensive coordinators. That's also bad news for Detroit because I assume Ben Johnson's going to leave at the end of this year. And for all the songs being sung rightly about Dan Campbell and the awesome post-game locker room speeches and all that kind of stuff, I think the magic, the secret sauce is actually Ben Johnson. And so he's going to leave. And then what? Does he go to Chicago and fix Caleb Williams? Because that's the other fascinating thing in history that I don't know if there's a precedent for. We've seen QBs bust, first overall picks bust before, and I know I'm not saying Caleb Williams is a bust just yet, but is there a precedent for the first QB in a draft being the worst by like the four guys behind him? Because as it stands right now, Jaden Daniels, Drake May are better, Bo Nix is better, right? If you redraft it, I don't know if people would take Bo Nix over Caleb Williams, but as it stands right now, Bo Nix is certainly better. So then what happens if Michael Penix outplays him too? There's like the Bears have Bears themselves once again. Everybody decided last spring, like, it's over with. The Bears finally solved their QB. How about the guy plays a little bit before we decide that he's definitely the savior of this team that hasn't had a good quarterback in the entirety of the Super Bowl era? But Hench, any thoughts on that? I mean, I don't think
I don't
there's
know I can't name the guys who were drafted after Jamarcus Russell, but they were all better.
touche. Good point. I don't know if it
Even
goes as
guys,
deep as
even
like
guys
I
who
can
never
get
took a
four
snap.
guys from that class that were better than him. Like that's pretty wild if that ends up being the case, huh?
Well, I'm not. The Bears, they can't protect him. I actually think he's had some nice moments. I'm not ready to throw dirt on Caleb Williams yet. That said, be great if Ben Johnson took his bag of tricks up to New England with
Oh.
emerging great best rookie quarterback in the
Hmm.
draft. I mean, Jaden Daniels has really come back to the pack in the last 6 weeks, and Drake May week after week after week. If it wasn't for Boutse's drop into the arms of a defender, May would have been 20 for 23 last week.
Yeah, you gotta hit the plunger and blow up assumptions about the way you have to do business in pro football. The people that defy that are in it this millennium, really. Belichick kind of starts that by turning, and he sort of presents as the most old school of them all, but he's the guy who sort of figured some things out about the game that a lot of people have tailed over the last 10 or 15 years now. And I think in the same way, so if you move on from a coach, it seems you could be Woody Johnson or Haslam or otherwise, like in the quick trigger kind of effect there. But if you feel like Jared Mayo isn't the answer, move on. If you can get Ben Johnson, you should do it. I think that a lot of people like that's just not how you do things. That's not the right way,
Hallelujah. You should try to win
right?
Super Bowls. Yeah. You should try to get first downs. That's my theory.
Spaghetti, Lions, Bears, your pick.
I think this is actually a blessing for the Lions. I understand the injuries are a concern. I do think even with Montgomery out, that Jahmyr Gibbs could easily handle the load. I mean, Amon-Ra, St. Brown's been scoring at a great clip. I'm not too worried about the offense. And I think too with this, how bad this Bears offensive line is, any defensive line will look really good against them. I mean, seriously, like I could play left tackle and you guys could play left guard and center, and we'd be better than what's going out there. And like I was pretty critical of Caleb, and I still kind of am because you don't like to see him slump over like he did for the third time on camera. He did it at SC, and he did it at Oklahoma. It's just not something you want to see happen. The mental makeup and like the control of the locker room, that's a real thing. Like the morale of the team, that's definitely a real thing. That being said, he made
And
some
by
nice
the way,
throws.
look at Mahomes in contrast, like has a high ankle sprain and he is not getting carried off of no field. He's
Sure.
standing there right next to Andy Reid waiting to go back in, coach. I'm ready to go. Like, hey, Pat, it's the Browns. Just stand there. We go better yet, go sit down. Would you, fella? We need you for big we have bigger fish to fry here. Meantime, Caleb Williams, you're right. May or may not still be alive sitting there on the
Can't do that.
bench.
You cannot do that. You can't show your emotion. You have to be like stone face, and he's not doing that. That being said, I do agree with what Hench said. Like he has some nice moments. He has like a really nice arm, like when he's scrambling out there, but then you see him like jumping to avoid these like ghosts because he's expecting to get hit. That's not good. Ben Johnson can come there and help coach him. Unless you're bringing five new offensive linemen, it's not going to help. So, yeah, I think right now the Lions needed this. The Lions are going to win this game comfortably, I think, by 2, 3 scores. So no worries there in the Lions. And plus, Aiden Hutchinson did say on a podcast that if they're in late in playoffs, that he's going to try to make his way back. So that's always good news.
Two of the usual suspects participating in the NFC postseason, the Vikings, the Seahawks, they're hooking up in Seattle. Seattle +3. Geno Smith tracking to play at the time of this recording. The total is 43.5. I got over my skis. I'm going to say it. When I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong. Although I don't want to say that too loudly because maybe Mike McDonald and company will turn things around, get into the playoffs and make some hay once they get here, get there. I think the hobble Geno Smith, though, kind of spooks me. And I just don't know what to make of the Minnesota Vikings. I said it to Eddie Spaghetti the other day, and I say it to you now, Hench. I think, people like to do that thing of like, this is the worst high end team with this record that we've ever seen. And like, I think like the Vikings are the best team that nobody talks about at all. Like nobody ever mentions them, although now all of a sudden lately it's about like, is Sam Darnold going to get re-signed? That's a debate. But up until then, there's been zero buzz about this team. And if they win out, which they're not going to, if you look at what they have down the home stretch, but if they win out, they are the number one seed in the mighty NFC. It's wild.
It's nuts, and they can't be under the radar. Then they won't. They'll emerge on the radar screen. What do you think happens this weekend?
I've held off on making a pick here. I really cannot figure out which way to lean on this one. I'm gonna go third on this one. Hence, you go
Okay,
first.
that's fine. You know, I don't know if other gamblers have this same thing, but like when I bet on Geno Smith, he is the scattershot bum who throws the ball to the wrong team, and you're like, oh yeah, that guy's a bust. And then when I bet against him, it's like, whoa, look at the arm on that guy. Like what? I cannot get it right. But he, and then you talk about Mahomes' body language and Caleb Williams' body language. Now, you know, in football, if you're so hurt, you have to leave the game. You really shouldn't play the following week. That's not really a football injury. Oh, I sustained an injury that precluded me from playing, but I can play this coming week. So that's a little weird to me, but I don't really think it matters if it's Geno Smith or Sam Howell because the Vikings are good. They're good, and they have got, I mean, we talked about Bo Nix and Caleb Williams and Drake May and Jaden Daniels and Michael Penix. How does J.J. McCarthy start next year? There's no chance. I mean, Darnold has been amazing, and, they're going to win 13 or 14 games, and they're definitely going to add a win this week in Seattle, 26-17.
I see. It seems like it's a given that they have to bring Sam Darnold back, but as I keep talking about, if you have Kevin O'Connell, why would you spend 50 million or whatever it would be to bring Sam Darnold back? Your process delivered JJ McCarthy, and you were going to start him before he got hurt. So why wouldn't you abide by that plan when it affords you the ability to flesh out the rest of the roster because you have your starting quarterback on his rookie deal, right? I mean that I get it. It just seems bad to the Vikings fans, especially if what you want if you're a Vikings fan, if the eventuality is that we're not going to keep Sam Darnold, is you want him to go out quietly. Like you'll be cool with it if you're a Minnesota fan if they lose in the wild card round, right? But if they go deep into the playoffs, then it becomes Joe Flacco in 2012. Like, well, you got to re-sign our hero. You can't let him go now. So that his success could jam up the Vikings if he goes deep into January,
The
right?
guy's going to throw over 35 touchdowns. I don't know. How do you go, okay, now we're going to turn it over to the unproven roll of the dice? We're a
Because it's a better
contender
long-term
now.
play.
I mean, I think if you're KO, that's who wants to re-sign Darnold the most.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get probably you're right about that, but I'm just providing you the devil's Dameshek, and I think it's a legitimate consideration. Spaghetti,
Yeah,
how
it,
say
it
you?
only works if you really buy into JJ McCarthy, and a lot of teams during the draft process did not buy into him. And I also
Well,
do
the
think
Vikings do though.
I also think right, but there are other teams that I mean, there's a reason why he was passed on all those other teams that needed just like quarterback starved teams like my Giants that passed. I'm not saying that they're the smartest franchise, but there were concerns with McCarthy being a passenger on the championship Michigan team. So I only think your thought really works if McCarthy's going to be good. If he was the Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May level of prospect, I don't think he really was that. And like Hench just pointed out, like Darnold is going to be, after this game's over, a shade below 4,000 yards. He's going to eclipse the 30 touchdown mark. If you told me years ago, like Darnold, after leaving the Jets, was going to do this in the year 2024 with the Vikings, I would have been like, put down the crack pipe. Like, that's insane. This team is all around good. The Seahawks, like I said last week, Packers coming to town. The Seahawks now have lost, I think, 5 of their 6 games, all at home. The Seattle home field advantage, the mystique, that is completely gone. They're a middle of the road defense. They're a bottom five rushing offense. And Geno Smith throws for a lot of yards. He only has 14 touchdown passes. He's not converting where it matters. I think that the Vikings are for real. I totally agree. They are the least talked about team because they're not the fun, sexy team with a big name, really outside of JJ. But Vikings are a legit threat, and they're gonna whip this team.
Well, we would talk about them a lot if they would rip that dumb dome off and it was snowy, and then we were looking forward to some playoff games out there in the elements. And the other factor is neither Walker nor Charbonnet has been practicing a lot this week. That dents the Seahawks' chances too. All right, you've convinced me. It's the Vikings in this one. 21-20, though, is where I'm going on this one. I think the Seahawks understand that they're scratching for their playoff lives. And just to finish the thought on Sam Darnold, they're not going to pull us. They're not going to pull all of the NFL about our belief in JJ McCarthy. They're the ones who drafted him. They wanted JJ McCarthy and were ready to start him. Doesn't mean they can't change things based on the evidence of this season, but they like JJ, but they obviously believe he is good, or else they wouldn't have used that high pick on him. Next up, Giants. Falcons. Ooh, Kirk Cousins to the Giants, maybe. How about that for you, Eddie Spaghetti? Michael Penix ready to roll in his debut. Ooh, pretty heavy. I thought the 16 and a half that they were catching it at home was an embarrassment. You're playing a guy in his first ever game and you're an 8.5 point dog to him. The Falcons, the total in this one is 42. I think the Giants, he's a rookie QB. I know the Giants have laid down and everything else. I think Michael Penix, all you need for this storybook to have a happy ending is a victory. It doesn't matter by hook or by crook. I think the Falcons get it 24-21. My question is to you, which is the worst New York team? I guess we'll let Spaghetti answer that one. Hench, what's your pick in this one?
Um, I've been watching. Kirk Cousins had a 4-game stretch with 0 TDs and 8 INTs, and the whole time we're like, Penix cannot be worse. Like Kirk Cousins was playing quarterback at the bottom level to the point where 3rd and 7 was a running down. I mean, that game against the Raiders where they're just trying to protect Kirk Cousins from himself so he doesn't just throw it to the other team. And then you're not really in contention for a championship, but you are in contention for a playoff spot. You can't be worse with Penix. Don't you want to see what you have? And so now we finally will see it. I don't think he's going to set the house on fire. But again, he obviously doesn't have to against this terrible Giants team. So I think it'll be kind of similar to what we just saw in Vegas, like a lowish scoring crap fest, a lot of Bijan, a lot of Algier. I think the Falcons get it 20-10.
Okay. Spaghetti, how say you here?
Oh, I could definitely see the Falcons scoring more than 20. I really do think that Kirk, his body just breaking down, not be able to force plant his feet, push off, force his arm, his body into throws. I think Penix will have that even with his, strange knee injuries throughout his college career. I still think he has more pep in his step. Obviously, will have a stronger arm, and he's not known for having a strong arm, but can throw a pretty nice deep ball. They do have weapons, the Falcons, even though they don't really utilize them every week. It's up and down with Kyle Pitts, up and down which running back gets the goal line carries. That Drake London had, he's supposed to be a super high-end receiver. I do think there's enough talent that the Giants just cannot match with when they're having 20 plus guys on the injury report. Are you kidding me? As long as Kevin Abrams and Tim McDonald and Chris Mara are still involved in player personnel and decision making, the Giants, they're going to be terrible. Lose this game. I think the mood has changed with the Giants now because of Dion finally saying like he's open to Shedeur Sanders coming to the Giants and Shedeur having a catch with Malik Neighbors, who, by the way, like Malik Neighbors should pack it up. He's been injured every single week. He could pack it up and go home. He's playing every week. He's been fantastic. So good job by him. He's a warrior, and there's some good young talent here. But yeah, I think Penix actually is going to light him up fairly good, and I do think the Giants are going to lay down because they know that Sanders is on his way, hopefully.
I just think it's nice that you're going to be able to use that Jacob Trouba blue and red jersey and T-shirt and everything else that you have of his, and just apply it when Kirk Cousins. You'll just tape over the Trouba, the number 8, and you can wear that for Kirk Cousins when he's your QB in 2025.
Not even joking. I mean, that's not going to happen at this point. But if they did some weird thing with like a stop, like the way it could happen, I guess, is if they win a stupid game or the standings change with the Raiders Jaguars. That's a big implications game the upcoming this weekend with the top pick. And if I really do think this draft is kind of trending towards a way where once you get past Shador and Cam Ward, there's a gap in the quarterbacks. And if the Giants brass, like the guys I just mentioned, they're like, you know what, let's go and sign a Kirk Cousins. I think like with our really terrible strength and conditioning staff, we're gonna figure out how to fix his Achilles tendon and everything else wrong with Kirk's body. The MetLife will not be standing beyond this draft, or beyond the free agency period. I will promise you that. I'm not saying it's me. I'm saying they're flying. They're flying. This is a terrible thing to say. They're flying planes over with like messages above MetLife Stadium saying like, John Mara fixed this team. Those planes will be flying over it. They're going to fly into the damn stadium when they go to fight Kirk.
Might be a little bit dark.
Spaghetti making news, man. All right.
You're not a part of this plan.
No, I said it already. I'm not, but I'm saying people
You're
have
not
lost
doing
they have lost their minds. They've
that's
lost
We've
their
known
minds.
you shoot your mouth off about what you're going to do to evildoers internationally, and then you don't do it.
I have a microphone in front of me.
Still walking the earth.
I have a microphone in front of me. I am just a vessel for the feelings of all these people in the tri-state area that have to watch the Giants somehow attempt to play football every Sunday.
I mean, it's a copycat league, and based on Russell Wilson to this point, do you think it's implausible that the Maras would go like, "Hey, look, that we thought Russ was done too, and look at the nice year he had. Let's do it with Kirk ourselves here." I could absolutely see
if they have a
like
top two pick, that will not happen.
If they get that,
come on, Shek. You're just being mean. They're not. Okay. Kirk Cousins is not going to be the quarterback of the Giants.
All right, maybe it'll be Curtis Rourke. All right, next. By the way, Falcons go to Washington. I mentioned that one. Duel of the rookie QBs may end up being for that last seed in the NFC, and they finish with Carolina, so that should be a win. All right, let's move on to one of the big games of the weekend. There are 4 guinea pigs that Kamish Goodell has settled on, and they are the Steelers and the Ravens and the Texans and the Chiefs. And those 4 teams are going to change dance partners after they play each other on Saturday and then turn back around and play on Christmas Day. How that impacts the players? Apparently, let's see how it goes, says Kamish Goodell. It's not my body that's going to get beaten up as a result of any of this. We'll start it off with the Steelers in Charm City. At the time of this recording, Ravens laying 6.5. The total is 45. I say all the talk about Lamar, why can't he get over on the Steelers? And Mike Tomlin has gotten a ton of looks at Lamar Jackson and has the blueprint to slow him down. I think coming off the bye for the Ravens, late as it was, and then the confidence builder against the Giants, I think it adds up to, after the gut punch that the Steelers just took, they see what is ahead of them. They have the game against the Chiefs upcoming and all of that. Yes, the division can be claimed by the Steelers, and it would be awfully luxurious to be able to put your feet up for the last 2 weeks and say, like, yeah, come in on one leg or two, Mahomes. We don't care. We don't need to win this game because we've already sealed up the AFC North. I think the Ravens get it 30-20. This is not your usual 20-17 type of game. I think that the Ravens actually put it on Pittsburgh. I think they bludgeon them. This hasn't quite reached Bill Russell v. Wilt Chamberlain kind of stuff, Lamar v. Mike Tomlin's defense, but it's kind of getting close. I think we put an end to that discussion with a big Ravens victory here. And now it throws all things into tumult, not just at the top of the AFC, because now the Chiefs and Bills chase for the number 1 seed, but also the AFC North crown now hangs in the balance, and the pairings for the wild card round now are turned on their ear by virtue of a Ravens win here, whereas the Steelers winning just kind of settles things, and you kind of have a clear vision of what at least the top 4 seeds are going to look like come January. Hench, how say you?
Well, I do agree the Ravens are going to win this game, although, I'm tempted to go the other way. I don't think they'll cover. That number feels too big. I think it's a field goal game, 24-21. You can only, like, the Ravens, you watch the highlights and you're like, they're a juggernaut. And you're like, yeah, but they lost to the Raiders at home. And then they lost to the Browns. And they just have so many bad moments that at a certain point you have to go, like, they're not that good. They're just not that good. So I think they can eke out a home victory against a a very solid but not spectacular Steeler team. What's Watt's status at this moment? Good to go.
It looks like he's going to play at the time of this recording. Pickens murkier still, but they as Tomlin said, they're leaving the light on for him as well.
So
We'll
I
see.
say Ravens get this one, but then a hiccup in the last two games. The Steelers still win the division.
Wow. Bold take. You know what? It's funny because I was thinking about it from the Steelers going into the Eagles game. A lot of enthusiasm pre-Philly, nationally, I think, about Russ's Steelers. But for what it's worth, I mean, they lost to the Colts, they lost to the Cowboys, and they lost to the Browns. Those are three atrocious losses until you consider who the Ravens lost to. And you just said, I mean, they lost at home to the Raiders. I mean, that's a worse loss than losing at home to the Cowboys with Dak Prescott. I mean, they have some bum losses
and
too,
Kyle,
which is curious.
Kyle Hamilton dropping the same interception 5 different times is going to cost them the division.
Yeah. Well, maybe Justin Tucker will cost them the division. Eddie Spaghetti, how say you?
As we said in the show many times, like whenever the Steelers play, a lot of times it does not make sense. Like they just find ways to win games in weird ways, and especially when they're playing the Ravens, where it seems like they, somewhat figure out how to slow down or stop Lamar Jackson, or if they don't, the Ravens will have to eke out a win, which is why I think this number's too big. I think the Steelers are definitely covering this. I actually, if you guys went against the Steelers, I'm going to pick them in this game. I still think like if we take a macro view of this season, I understand like after the loss of the Eagles, but if you look at this team, it's a top 10 rushing offense, top 10 scoring offense, and a top 10 scoring defense. So it's like, yeah, there are some deficiencies in the past game, but that has come on the last few weeks, except for last week. I know with Pickens out, obviously it's a huge miss, but it's been a long season. They're not a bad team, and I think that in division, Tomlin just figures it out. 6.5 points, like come on, that's way too much. They're gonna win. They're definitely gonna cover. And I'll pick them to win just to be different.
I mean, like even if they were to beat the Chiefs, I think it would then set up like, okay, we're locked in. But the thing that is not settled hash at this point is that the Bengals game, the season ender, in Pittsburgh, is a meaningless game. I would imagine if the Steelers need that one on any level, and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are coming to town. Oh, I'd be sick in my balls. Next up, Texans and the Chiefs. They're the other. A couple of teams part of this weird NFL experiment. The Chiefs laying 3.5 on the assumption that Patrick Mahomes, despite the high ankle sprain, is going to play full practice and all of that. To this point in the week, the total is 41.5. Pretty meager, and I don't care what the context of it is. The Steelers and Ravens have a bigger total than CJ Stroud versus Patrick Mahomes game. That's wild stuff. But instead of being negative, maybe that is a tribute to the two defenses. Fourth and fifth in terms of total defense are the Texans and Chiefs here. Chiefs seem like they're getting right again defensively after their little midseason stumble. I think the Texans go into Arrowhead and they win the game. We already know that the Chiefs rarely cover at home. I think that the Texans beat them outright 22-21. Hench, how say you?
It's funny. The as we watch the Lions lose guys every week, the other season-long Super Bowl favorites getting a guy back every week, right? The Chiefs just are getting deeper and stronger seemingly every week, timing it exactly right. And that D-line getting after it last week, Karlaftis in Jameis's lap all game long. The Texans cannot keep Stroud upright. I think in a weird twist, the Chiefs cover 2 weeks in a row, 27-17.
Wow. 27-17. Spaghetti, how say you?
This game has me confused because I'm just trying to think about the injury to Mahomes. And if he was seriously injured, especially when you have a short, quick turnaround to play a Saturday game, then you have a Wednesday game on Christmas Day, and obviously two big time AFC opponents. Like if he was seriously injured and you don't want the threat of him getting pulled from the game, it wouldn't make sense to pull him from the game and then be like, but he's going to be fine for Wednesday. There's just no way you could turn it around. So I guess that means that his ankle is fine. That's why he's practicing fully and he's healthy, which means that like the Texans started this week going like, oh, wow, we're gonna face the backup who is it, Carson Wentz or whatever. They're gonna be like, oh, great, we have an easy one. Like, Mahomes is out, 15's out, and then now he's practicing, and people are like, oh, he still has a bum ankle. It's like this is gonna be like a 4 touchdown Patrick Mahomes game. So I'm with Hench. They're gonna win this game and they're gonna cover at home.
It's funny. I always say that the other leagues copycat the NFL, but it seems like the NFL in this case is copying the NBA's load management. Who knew that it was going to be such a factor in these final weeks of the regular season here? Should they play Mahomes? Does it make sense to play him this week? Should we hold him out for Christmas Day or both of those games? How much that's going to impact who gets the number one seed and what may end up being who gets to the Super Bowl is interesting. All right, let's move on and quickly do round one of the college football playoff, and Tennessee, Ohio State, the Buckeyes laying 7 in this one. 46 is your total. This is the Ryan Day, win or you're done. Like, I mean, I don't think that's necessarily true for James Franklin. I think there will be some hard conversations should they lose that one. But I think everybody understands that Day is out if they don't beat the Vols. And the Vols are the best road team in this first round. I think the Vols go in there and beat them outright. Hench, how say you?
I agree that number, which I've seen at 7.5, is just too big for a team that lost to an awful Michigan team. But I think Ohio State's coach lives to fight another day. 24-20, guys.
Yeah, I'm not going to even mess with the totals. I mean, I don't want to be a pretentious ass. I'm just going to go with the number. I'm going Tennessee +7. And to your point about Michigan, and like we talked about earlier in the week, they are kind of, if you blur your eyes and are colorblind, Tennessee is kind of like Michigan. Good defense is what they're about and running the ball. That's Tennessee is a better version of what Michigan is this year. And I don't think, obviously, based on the results, OSU is built so much of the heavyweight teams win, like 7 or 8 of Ohio State, as a for instance, their wins even in the Big Ten are owed to the fact they're like, yeah, we're just better than you. It's like the Yankees playing, if they got to play the Pirates and Marlins for 162 games, they would have, you would just win out just because, well, we're just better and stronger than you are. That carries the day most weekends for Ohio State. That's not the case here. Spaghetti.
Well, Shek, you stole my thunder. I'm taking
Oh,
Tennessee as well in the upset. Not just saying this
ooh.
because our pal Sully is one of my best friends too. But the defense, especially the defensive line on Tennessee, fantastic. Dylan Sampson, running back, fantastic. And then we're not even talking about Nico, who is very well could be the number one overall pick next year, depending on what goes on with Arch Manning and other quarterbacks who may or not come out or not. But I just think like the Will Howard experiment, this is going to happen now with all these big time schools with the NAL. What's his big moment? Like kind of a boneheaded decision late in the Oregon game is beating Penn State, who never beats teams ranked higher than them, a big win. Like not really under James Franklin. It's not. So I just think this Ohio State team is now getting another great team. And we saw what they did versus Michigan, and it was pathetic. And I just think this Tennessee team could also score when they have to. They have some really nice victories this year. I think Tennessee may actually be the better team, despite how good Ohio State's defense is. Tennessee's defense is for real. Their offensive firepower to me, it excites me more. I think they're going to win this game.
Tennessee wears orange, so too do Clemson and Texas. I guess Texas is more properly burnt orange, but either way, Texas laying 12 for the visiting Tigers. Dabo, I said the other day again, is sort of like now. All of a sudden, I feel like Dabo and Clemson equal Tom Izzo and Michigan State in March Madness. I wouldn't want that. I mean, I know like they don't belong in this tournament, but they're in this tournament, and I wouldn't want to see them come into town in a special season. 12 is heavy, and so much of this, I bet you that a lot of people I bet you the public will be all over Texas on this logic. Look at what Georgia did to Clemson to start the season. The problem with that thinking is, and so much of the polls and everything pivoted off of that result. Like, see, the SEC is just king, and look at what a good Georgia team did to a good Clemson team back on the first day of September, or whenever that was. Clemson's gotten better. Texas still has not beaten anybody. I mean, they didn't beat anybody all season long. I think Texas is going to survive this game, but they are not going to cover. Give me Clemson plus the 12, and the total on this one is 52. Hench, how say you?
Yeah, same garage. I mean, you got a team playing with house money, didn't, just didn't expect to be there.
Right.
Clemson's got to be loose. All the curse of Sposta is on the Longhorns. Against Georgia, they certainly didn't look like a team that should be laying 12 to a team that gives out scholarships. So I say Texas gets it, doesn't cover 30 to 20.
Spaghetti.
Dabo just signed his first NIL transfer person. He finally entered the portal, so maybe things are changing for Dabo. He's seen the light now. It's a lot of points. I think Clemson probably will cover. Do I think that Clemson's playing a lot better? No. I mean, they let SMU come like storm back in that game. It was closer than it should have been. They did lose to South Carolina, who is better than them in the last regular season game. Cade Klubnik had a fine season, and I really don't love. I said this to you, Shek, the other day we recorded with Jessica, but like I don't love the it's like subbing out Quinn Ewers, like to bring an Arch even just to run the ball. I don't really love that. If he is your guy, if he is a Heisman candidate, if he was supposed to be a projected very high draft pick, you do not take him out of the game. We didn't see, to use Clemson example, you didn't really see Trevor Lawrence come out of games. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. So they clearly have, doubts with him and when he's in a tough spot. So I think Texas should be a lot better than what they really are. So that's why I have Clemson covering this game, but I think Texas will win.
I don't know what James Franklin has on the NCAA, but it must be something good to get the gift that they have. SMU in Happy Valley, and then if they win that Boise State, for some reason that means that Penn State, when it's been gifted to them, won't win both of those games. I can't pick against them beating SMU here for all my wisecracks about the Nittany Lions. They have this season taken care of a couple of real good foes in some big spots. They don't beat teams better than they are, but SMU is not as good as they are. I think Penn State survives this one by double digits total, by the way. In the Nittany Lions are laying 8.5. Total is 54.5 here. I think Penn State covers the 8.5. Hench, how say you?
Totally agree. This one, I mean, I'm all over Penn State against Oregon, the number one team in the nation. Penn State's leading rusher averaged over 8.5 yards a carry. Their second leading rusher averaged over 10 yards a carry, and their third leading rusher averaged over 10 yards a carry. The only mistake Penn State made was ever throwing the ball. Like when they just handed it off, they marched into the end zone. This will be a physical mismatch this week. Blowout. Penn State 38, SMU 17. Penn State plus 620 to win the whole thing when you start in the semis. SMU and Boise State. Come on, football. It's insane that Oregon, that the teams ranked higher than Penn State have a much tougher journey to the semis than Penn State. If Penn State gets Oregon in the title game, you're going to bet against the team that dump trucked Oregon on the ground. So I think that of all the enticing numbers to win the national championship, given Penn State's path and the size of that number, plus 620 is the most attractive number on that board.
Okay. I hear you. I think you are being seduced, and rightly, by the easy breezy first couple of games, but they are going to have to beat somebody that is in fact more talented they are, and that's been the kryptonite of James Franklin. I don't think he has it in him to win two of those games and win the Natty. Spaghetti, how say you?
I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I think it's kind of fool's gold. I really wouldn't pick Penn State to even survive a combination of those, SMU, Boise State, and then either Notre Dame or Georgia. I just don't see it happening because of James Franklin's track record, because of Drew Aller in big games. He really does not perform. They still did give up a lot of points to Oregon, who is, I mean, rightly so. Oregon's number one team in the country, and Dylan Gabriel's been fantastic. I just think that this game will be probably a little hairier, a little closer than it should be. Tyler Warren, though, for Penn State. Can't argue with him. Like Mackey Award winner, he is fantastic. He is almost uncoverable. So I think if Drew Aller is going to have a good game passing, you have to just target the tight end. Obviously, SMU knows that, so they're going to do everything they can to stop him. I think it'll be close-ish. I think maybe at the end of the game, Penn State will pull away and cover and win. But I don't think SMU is too bad, and just Penn State doesn't do anything that wows me.
But I mean,
All right.
if you think Penn State's going to win this game, and you think Penn State's going to beat Boise State. Well, then that plus 620 is going to be plus 350.
Right.
So,
No, you're
you
right.
know, it's a,
I think SMU actually will be a tougher test than Boise State will be, is I guess, my hot take.
I kind of pull back from it though, and before you even start looking at the specific path for Oregon or is just I think about it in terms of like, can that team win 3 games against the best teams in college football? And when it pairs your list down real tight, one of the teams I think can do that is Notre Dame. Notre Dame, if they win this one, would go to Georgia and presumably play the backup QB. Georgia is not as good as they have been in their national championship years. I know some people are putting something on Georgia right now because of what appears to be a fairly breezy path if you look at it from their perspective. I guess either way, the Irish are laying 7 to the Hickory Huskers. I mean, the Indiana Hoosiers. Total is 52.5. Curtis Rourke, Coach Sig running in. He's going to have something special to show them fighting Irish up in South Bend there. I would love to take the Indiana Hoosiers. I'm just trying to enjoy the moment. We have no chance. We have no business even being in this playoff. Come on. This is the stuff of Oregon and Texas and Ohio State and Georgia. Indiana has no place here. Notre Dame wins it in a classic, 35-32. Hench, how say you?
Same garage, Notre Dame winning and not covering. You know, we talked about it already. I think the Irish got screwed worse than anybody in this. I don't see how, first of all, you're not eligible for a bye, which is kind of weird. Just a rule, even if you're the number 2 team in the nation, you can't get a bye. And then I think this is a tough first round matchup that they survive.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, pedigree probably wins out, but just as a 320-pound muscle bound 5-star freak can lean on a 3-star kid who's 40 pounds lighter and win that battle, the curse of Sposta is heavy too. And it is 100% on the Fighting Irish, Eddie Spaghetti. How say you?
I feel a lot better about this game because of the jersey unveil. They're not wearing black jerseys like people thought. They're wearing their blue.
Oh,
It's
they
just
are, huh?
nice shiny gold. It looks fantastic. We talked about this in the episode earlier in the week. They got a lot of guys back, nice and healthy. Notre Dame hasn't scored less than 30 points since their very weird September. They've been on a roll. They've been beat downing teams. I hate saying this, but I do think this has the chance to be the biggest blowout of the weekend just because of how Notre Dame has played teams and they've smothered them. I think people really underestimate because there's so much hatred and vitriol towards them, which I understand. They haven't won big games, but their defensive backfield is just so damn good. And if they get a rush now, which they will with Howard Crossback, like I mentioned, and I just think their offensive ground game has been just so good. Riley Leonard's seemingly fully healthy now, and I just think that the home it may be snowing in this game. It just kind of playing into Notre Dame's hands. And it's a primetime game. The stadium will be loud. Notre Dame, last time they played Indiana, I believe they were penalized because the referees couldn't hear because of how loud the stadium was. So that's always good to know. So I
Yeah,
just
that
think
was because there were a bunch of drunken Hoosiers in the stands, one of them being Dave Dameshek. I am not going to be there. All my pals are going to be inside the stadium or gathered around it. Some of these goons are driving from Chicago and Indianapolis just to tailgate outside of the stadium. I love it. I wish I could be a part of it. I hope it's a gay time for all involved, and I hope that those Hoosiers faithful get to walk out of there celebrating a victory against Notre Dame. I don't think you'd ever come back from that one. You think losing to Northern Illinois in September was bad. How about losing to the Hoosiers in a
Yeah,
playoff game?
I still think. I mean, losing to a playoff team is fine, and unlike what Cignetti said about like the best 12 teams aren't in the playoff, and that like Notre Dame shouldn't be in it because they lost to NIU. It's like, bro, you're
Did
trying.
he say
He did,
that?
and he just giving them bulletin board material, which is really bad to do because Marcus Freeman. There's one thing he's good at, especially after the loss to NIU, is reminding them about the losing to a team in the MAC. And what's the significant victory for Indiana if you're going to start playing that game? But Notre Dame has not responded in the media. They're going to let the play be on the field, and talking will be done after the game's over. So I think that was a really bad choice by your head coach.